So there's a minor trend on TikTok called Normalize not telling anyone anything. And you know what? It has its charms. So let's talk about that. This is the Lenora Faye Show. Welcome to this mini-sode where we are going to talk about normalizing not telling anyone anything. And on that note, I'm your host, Lenora Faye. Thank you for listening. This has been a mini episode. I'm not telling you guys anything. Bye. I'm kidding. So I'm actually re-recording this episode right now because my original version on this topic came through quite negative when I heard it in playback. I had it all done and edited, and then I thought, I don't know if I want to put that out. It's focusing a little bit too much on the negative aspects. By that, I mean, I went down this rabbit hole of how I react when somebody posts or shares with their network that they're struggling with something, and it's just like it's basically like someone posting, cryptically on their Facebook page that something's going wrong in their life. And I read that as a cry for help, which in essence isn't wrong. It's good to reach out. But a blanket reach out, I don't necessarily vibe with that. I was focusing a little bit too much on that and then sharing some experiences I had. And I just, listening back, I'm like, I don't want to put that energy out. So I still want to address that side of it. But then there's also the when you have a vision, when you have a dream and you start working on it, don't tell anybody. I mean, tell the people that need to know, like a business partner or a partner, or maybe there is somebody that you do have that is your ultimate cheerleader that you just, and you don't even then you don't have to go through every single detail, but just start, because this is the other thing. You see people talking about their hopes and dreams in a public setting, meaning, like, again, I'm just going to use social media as an example. And, there's a lot of well wishes and whatnot. And, life proceeds to be life. And half the time there isn't any follow through, or maybe like 75% of the time there isn't any follow through. And that's how I look at when things are broadcasted in a negative sense on social media and nothing is ever done about it. There's a lot of attention and coddling and what have you. And nothing gets done. So this normalizing not telling anyone anything is actually, to me, a very powerful thing that we can do for ourselves. I realize it's like this show, this podcast, is a platform where I share things that I've gone through, but I've already gone through them, good, bad, or otherwise. And I package it in a form of entertainment. And this is how I look at artists. I love it, like when people go through things, the highs, the lows of life, it's important to share that with people. And at the same time, how you share it, how we share it, how I share it matters. So I was thinking about how to navigate when things are challenging, not fun. Because I'm thinking right now, of course, like every single one of us is going through something of a varying degree, right? Good and bad, I think. There are aspects of, like, there are things I'm going through right now that I'm definitely not going to share until things have, evolved. And then one day I'll go back and revisit this time in my life in the form of entertainment. And that's how I view art and people that create advocacy and businesses, like pain. What do they say? You turn your pain into art or a business or something that's beneficial. You can also turn your pleasure, your joy into art, and something that art or a business, something that helps humanity. That I think we need to normalize. And again, not that everyone needs to become an artist or an entrepreneur. I'm totally not advocating for that. I think that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm working through my thoughts in real time as I'm recording this. Because again, I had really put a negative spin on, like, people stop broadcasting your stuff to people that don't care, the people that can't do anything, the people that don't want to do anything. Maybe this is a Canadian perspective. Again, I don't know. I suppose Americans have a different viewpoint of this. And not that my audience is all Americans. I know you guys are coming from different parts of the world. But okay, now I want to know, where did this trend come from? Is this trend originally in the U.S.? Like, it's not that Canadians don't complain about things. There's just so few of us compared to other countries. There's so few of us that our complaints don't make it very far, because our audience is less. Our population is so much less. I'm advocating for, taking back your power and not telling people anything. Okay, so here's the other thought of that. Going through a challenge in life that is scary and uncertain, and at the same time working towards a vision that we have for our lives, which is also uncertain and scary. I've come to realize at this particular point in my life that it's actually a very sacred thing. And why would I want to broadcast it? Especially to people that, like, nobody knows our inner life. There's nobody, even your closest people. But at the same time, it is important to have a support system and to be very mindful of who is in that support system. And that support system may change from year to year, month to month. Honestly, there are only 3 people, including myself, so maybe 3.5 people, I'm the half person, who knows what's truly going on in my day-to-day. And that's really intentional, because I don't need 1,001 opinions, and I don't need 1,001 different points of energy, right? There are a few more people that know what my vision for my life is, and I only shared that once I got the vision started. It's an incredibly sacred thing to work through your own stuff. It's a little bit easier being this age, like in my 40s, versus doing that in my 20s, where, man, that was hard. It's still challenging. I don't think any decade is less challenging, but you just develop more skills and more tools, and you have a little more experience navigating. But I guess the question is, what is the point of telling everybody everything? Good and bad, honestly. If it doesn't actually bring value to people. And now that might seem a little harsh, but I just feel like there's a way to share what we've been through. Not necessarily what we're going through, because I think we can't really see what we're going through until most of it's past. But when we can share in a way that actually benefits people, like adds value to people, what we've gone through, like putting it in the form of art or writing or music, or again, a business, or bringing it or a creative solution that helps your place of work, what have you, that's when we tell people. It has a nicer vibe to it. Again, because every single one of us is going through something now. Every single one of us has gone through stuff, and we're going to continue going through stuff. And ultimately, it's going to push us in, I think, a better direction. And when we have a vision that we're working towards, that we're really excited about, that it's calling us, that, and of course we want to tell people, but don't tell people. Don't tell people. I mean, again, tell like the 1 or 2 people that you trust with your life, or that, maybe they can help, or just to be your cheerleader, like your unconditional love cheerleader. That is very helpful. I've had to learn to, reach out when I need to, but I'm very mindful of who I do that with. The other thing is, you can't force people to be in your corner. I don't care if they're in your network. I don't care if you've had a history with them. You can't force that on people. I've gone through that this year, where people have, one in particular, tried to force something, and then I was like, okay, this person can't be on my business team. Yeah, there's been a few other instances where it may not seem as forceful, but I recognize, okay, this is not energy that I can have in my space right now. I just don't have the capacity. So it goes the other way too. When people are trying to tell you everything, and for whatever reason you don't have the capacity to handle what they're telling you, tell them, or at least acknowledge to yourself that this isn't working. Like, you can't handle that. There have been times where I've done that, where I realize, okay, I can't handle this for whatever reason. This is just not something that I can deal with or want to deal with. So then I usually just say out loud to the universe, like, I can't deal with this. Can you please remove this person from my life? Or can you just, like, I can't deal with this. It has to be dealt with in a different way. And then life just resolves itself. And I think, and again, that's a sacred and powerful move we can do, because ultimately, especially with social media, and especially when you accidentally create an online community for yourself, it's really easy to be inundated with everybody's stuff, or people wanting to know what you're doing, because maybe you have been public and broadcasting a lot of stuff, and then they just assume that's what your life is like all the time, but it never is. You know, you just go through different periods of your life. So let's own our sacred space again, and don't tell everybody everything. Don't tell anybody anything if you don't want to. Again, reach out if you have to, but be mindful of who you're reaching out to, because not everyone is meant to know what's going on. You don't want everyone to know what's going on. And it's not because you need to hide anything. It's just you're giving yourself space to learn more about yourself. And I'm really speaking to myself here on this, to be honest. But yeah, what it does is it does create space. And then you're not asking 1,001 questions. And then you don't feel like you have to keep updating people. Because people are busy. I'm busy. But you just, wish them well. Let people wish you well. And if you really don't want to answer questions, just say everything's fine and leave it at that. So, on that note, thank you for listening to this mini-sode. If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and on Apple Podcast. You can also leave comments on Spotify. I don't know if you can on Apple, but if you do want to engage with the podcast, you can definitely leave comments there on Spotify. This is also on YouTube currently, so you can leave comments on that stream if you wish. You can also support the podcast with a donation, because believe it or not, it's not free to make podcasts. I don't know how many times I had this conversation with people about the Child for Girls podcast, because even though it may be for fun, it still costs. Internet ain't cheap. There will be a link down below to that GoFundMe. You can follow me on Instagram if you're not, at I am Lenora Faye. So thank you again for listening and for supporting the show, and we will chat in the next episode.